When you look at the carbon emissions of the deliveries you receive, what you're looking at broadly is the carbon emissions of the vehicles and the transportation system used to get the parcel to you, not what you receive. Okay, that's covered in supply chain. It's really quite straightforward. There's one big simplification that we make to make it all kind of, soluble, so we can get an answer out and get a useful figure. Let's have a look at how we do it. Deliveries in. You need to look at A, are they significant? If they're not significant, don't worry about them. B, if they are significant in manufacturer, or if you're in some sort of construction or reseller business, then yes, you have to consider them. Group them together, so you can say, I've got this group of deliveries, this group of deliveries, this group of deliveries, whatever it's going to be. And then for each delivery, have a look at how it gets to you, what the different legs of the journey were, what vehicle made each leg of the journey, how far they went, and sometimes how heavy that was. Put it into the software, process it all through, you'll get an answer out, and that's how you process the deliveries coming into you as a company. When we come to consider the carbon emissions of the deliveries you receive, if you're a service company, if you're a school, if you're an office-based sort of company, then don't fret, okay? There are some figures out there, for example, the average emissions from receiving something via Amazon, via FedEx, via UPS, etc. They're normally built into software these days, so you can just say, I receive 7 parcels per week from Amazon, that sort of thing, and it will work it out for you, but it's not going to be significant, okay? So one of my clients once spent, I don't know, a long time figuring out, a couple of days, the carbon emissions, and it was tiny. So I just wouldn't worry about it, just make an estimate and, concentrate on the things that are significant in your carbon footprint, okay? And now, having said that, if you're a service company, manufacturing, construction, all that sort of stuff, then yeah, the carbon emissions associated with transporting whatever it is being transported into you can be significant, and you do have to sort of take them into consideration. We make life easier for ourselves with net zero by saying, well, we're only going to consider the carbon emissions in terms of deliveries from the supplier, and I'm based in the UK, and it will be a UK supplier, okay, like the importer or the warehouse or the wholesaler, to us. Okay, I am completely aware that some of the goods come a long way, might come in from China or from Far East, but they come into the wholesaler. That's the wholesaler's problem. And what we consider for our carbon footprint is that last stage, from the supplier gate to your gate. Okay, it makes the problem much easier. Now, if you're dealing in the realms of the next layer up, science-based targets, TCFD, a full sort of ESG report, big stuff, then you can't really make that simplification, and you do have to take these things into consideration. But for our purposes with net zero, it's from the supplier or the importer to you, gate to gate. Okay. Now what you have to do is you have to consider, the legs of the journey it takes to get to you. Typically that will either be, by rail, maybe by truck, by van. And with each of the legs, you figure out either how long the leg is, or what the weight is, or in some cases both. You actually look at the weight times the distance. And it depends what the vehicle is transporting about which one of those you use. And broadly, sometimes that's kind of sort of married up with what it is being transported. If it's a heavy, bulky item, you need to consider both the weight and the distance, okay? Now there's tables for this. Once you know what each leg of the journey is, there might be one leg. You might say, well, we receive steel from the supplier to us. That's fine, it's not a problem. Once you know what each of the legs are, you can then use the carbon factors, the carbon emission factors, and say, right, for this particular delivery, I'm going to use distance, and I know that it's for example, a fully laden truck that traveled 100 miles, carrying some, for example, 200 kilograms, and you can look up the carbon emissions for that, or the software will do it for you, and that will be the carbon emissions of that leg of the journey. If you then group those deliveries into sort of broad groups, you can then say, for example, large steel deliveries, I had 27 of those last month. Or you might say, for example, orders from so-and-so supplier, we had, for example, 212 of those last month. Whatever it's going to be, group them, okay? Each one define the legs, with each leg define distance, weight, or distance and weight, And then all you do is you just add them up each month. Sounds worse than it is. For most people, it's not actually that complicated. And once you get your teeth stuck into it, it's really very soluble. And the software these days will do a lot of these things for you, so you don't have to kind of fret too much. Now, if you want to know more details, have a look at my book, Net Zero for Business. It's available on Amazon, and I think this is about page 114, 15, that sort of stuff we're talking about. And it lists out a little bit more detail, lists out the carbon factors and stuff like that. And if you want a really practical guide on how to save or to reduce your carbon footprint for your business, have a look at this. It's very usable, very readable. I don't make a penny from it, so all I do is just charge the production costs. It's my way of giving back to the community. So if that's of interest to you, get yourself over to Amazon, get yourself a copy of that. And if you wanted to give it a good review, well, that would just be fantastic. All right, see you next time.